Harris is the first female, first black, and first South Asian U.S. vice president-elect, and her triumph marks a new high point in a career of barrier-breaking achievements.
And what a testament it is to Joe's character that he had the audacity to break one of the most substantial barriers that exists in our country and select a woman as his vice president. But while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last.
For more on the significance of Kamala Harris' accomplishments, we are joined by Avis Jones-Weaver, editor-in-chief at Max Black Politics. Good to have you back with us here in your morning. I can see you're smiling when you hear that line, and it's hard not to. Talk to us about the significance of her win.
It is absolutely barrier-breaking. It's glass ceiling, if not concrete ceiling smashing, and it's very inspiring. It makes me think about Shirley Chisholm, who was the first black woman to run for president on a major party ticket. And after she bowed out of that race, one of the things that she said, I believe, ultimately was very prophetic. She mentioned that she believed that for people to really get a sense of what it might be like to be able to accept a woman, just a woman, not necessarily even a black woman, as president in the United States, we first have to have a woman serve in the position of vice president. And here we are with this amazing black woman and woman of South Asian descent who has, in fact, breached that barrier, being the first woman to do so. And I'm just super proud and grinning ear to ear.
Yeah, talk to me more about that, Avis. What does this mean to you personally, both as a woman and a woman of color?
It means a bit of satisfaction. You know, I wrote a book called How Exceptional Black Women Lead. And one of the things that's very consistent about the black woman's experience here in America is that leadership is not new to us. It's true to us. We are leaders in every sphere that you can imagine. However, we rarely are officially given the mantle of leadership. We lead in our communities. We lead in our families. We do a lot of the work that's necessary for other people to be able to lead, but our work is rarely recognized with ascension to leadership. We can't just sit back and wait for someone to give us that. We have to have the ambition to go and get it. And for many of us, even with all that ambition, it's not been enough. But here we have the confluence of history, a woman who has that preparedness, who had that ambition, who put in the work for years, and a man who was secure enough with himself to select a woman to be his running partner for this race. And all of that happening at a moment in history in which women, especially black women, are coming to the polls in record numbers to make it so, has made this day a reality. And I could not be more proud and more excited.
It must have been emotional for you watching that speech.
It was. But you know what was even more emotional than just for me? It was seeing that image of her with her two little nieces with their little Afro puffs. And I remember when I was a little girl, I just loved it. I just remember when I was a little girl with my braids and with my Afro puffs, and how amazing it would have been for me to see that as a reality at that age, instead of just a figment of my imagination. And so to me, the most beautiful thing about this is the legacy that this will create for little girls all around this nation, who will now be able to say, there are no barriers there for me, even when it comes to the highest offices in the land. I can make it. I can make it happen.
I want to pick up on an earlier point that you mentioned, and Kamala mentions this in her speech, where she says, you know, Joe Biden's character, he had the audacity to break one of the most substantial barriers that exist in our country. Talk to us about the fight that would have been happening behind the scenes for her to be on that ticket. She was not the first choice to be on the ticket, to be his running mate. So what barriers would she have faced to even get on the ticket?
Well, you know, to be perfectly honest with you, it was a fight to get her on that ticket. There were a number of black women who were organizing, me among them, to put some pressure on the Biden campaign to select a black woman for that ticket. Our argument was you would not have a candidacy if it were not for black women. When his candidacy came to South Carolina in the primaries, it was literally dead on arrival. He was almost out of money. He hadn't won any other previous primaries. And if he had lost South Carolina, that would have been the end of his presidential ambitions. It was black women who breathed life into his candidacy. And for decades, it's been black women that have been the backbone of the Democratic Party. No one supports the party with more fervency, with more consistency, and with a larger and more, just you can count on it, voting bloc than Black women. Given all of those things, we believe that Black women earned that slot and was super, super excited when that slot was afforded to Kamala Harris, who I believe even, beyond that particular argument, was clearly a standout and one of the most, if not the most qualified woman among the slate that he was choosing from in the first place.
Really quickly, Avis, in the short time that we have left, I want to ask you about Kamala's husband, who will now become, he will also make history. He's going to become America's first second gentleman. So what role will he play?
This is going to be interesting to see because, as you mentioned, this is a first. We've never seen it before. So what will a second gentleman do? Traditionally similar to quote unquote first ladies, second ladies similarly have their own platform. They have their own issues that they focus on. When Dr. Biden was in that role, she continued her profession as a community college professor, but also focused on things like servicing the troops in various ways. So it'll be up to him to determine how he wants to create that space for himself. But most of all, I think one of the most powerful contributions that he's making already is that he is showing what it looks like to have a strong, very accomplished man also be very proud of his spouse and to love his spouse and support his spouse through all of her ambitions and not feel like he needs to diminish her in any way. That, above all, to me, is a very important role modeling effect that I hope that men around this nation really absorb, because there are lots of women out here who could use that extra support from their partners in life.
History being made on two fronts. Avis, good to talk to you this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.